Carlsbad Caverns. My name is Kristen Kaiser.
My name is Jenna Belli.
I'm Justin Shane.
The location of Carlsbad Caverns is in the southeast corner of Eddy County in New Mexico. In 1898, Jim White found and began exploring the Carlsbad Caverns. On October 25th, 1923, the caverns were declared a national monument, and in 1930 a national park. Most recently, in 1995, the park was designated as a World Heritage Site. The park was made a national park to preserve the caves in the fossil reef, and it includes 83 separate caves, and the nation's deepest limestone cave and the third longest cave.
The Carlsbad Caverns began forming around 250 million years ago. They began forming on a 400-mile long reef on an inland sea that previously covered this area. Cracks developed in the reef as it grew seaward, and eventually the sea evaporated. Then a few million years ago, uplift and erosion began occurring, which uncovered the rock reef, which was buried below. Then rainwater would become acidic from the carbon dioxide it absorbed from the air and the soil, and it would seep down into the cracks in the reef. This would dissolve limestone, forming large chambers. Also, while this was happening, hydrogen sulfide was migrating upward from the vast oil and gas deposits from below the reef. The hydrogen sulfide combined with the groundwater to form sulfuric acid. And sulfuric acid is a very corrosive substance, which is the main reason for the large passageways throughout the caverns. The caves get decorated. This is referring to the stalactites and stalagmites found throughout the caves. Stalactites are formations that form from the ceiling, and stalagmites form from the base of the cave. Raindrops would fall and absorb the carbon dioxide from the air and soil. They would then dissolve a little bit of limestone while absorbing the calcite, which was the main ingredient for building the rock formations throughout the cave. The drops would emerge in the cave, and then they would release the carbon dioxide. Then they were unable to hold in the calcite anymore, and they would deposit the mineral load as a crystal. Billions and billions of these drops would add up to form the stalactites and stalagmites, and eventually stalactites and stalagmites would connect to form columns. This is a cross-section of Carlsbad Caverns. It's extremely pixelated, I apologize for that. But it gives a good idea of the depth. Down here is the big room, which is the main attraction of Carlsbad Caverns. That is 1¼ mile deep in the earth. This is a better map of the caves. Here's what I was talking about, is the big room. It is the largest room in the caverns. It's where most people go down to see when they go on with their tour guides throughout the rest of the caverns. There's a natural entrance in the top right, which people who are only physically fit are recommended to take that route down to the caverns. And there's another entrance which was built at the top. You can take the elevator shaft straight down to the big room.
Alright, so I will be talking about the potential natural hazards to the park. And the caves are continually being changed by natural processes. So some of these natural processes include things like dissolution, which is how the cave formed in the first place, groundwater flow, and rock collapse. So this interfered with the there's interference with the natural processes due to humans, and these processes can include like endangerment and destruction of the cave resources. Some other potential natural hazards include sinkholes, and these are widely impacted in the park, like of human impact, so they're afraid that a sinkhole could potentially happen. And this causes because soils and sediment overlie the karstic bedrock, and that is it includes like limestone, so it can be widely dissolved. And there's a solution to this because there are drainage problems in the park. So erosion due to humans clogs the natural drains, and the lack of surface water flowing through the park can be I'm sorry. They inserted storage drain systems to fix the drainage problems. So some other threats to the park are human impacts, and human impacts wildly affect the cave life. So when humans affect the area, many problems occur. So we commonly see these alterations due to surface water flow patterns and changes in the airflow patterns in the caves. The microclimate is at a constant degree of 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And this change can cause alterations. Foreign elements can be brought into the park from humans, so these can be very harmful. And cave houses endanger species of bats, ferns, and lichens. And the bats come to the cave during the summer months of the park, and about 50% of the bats are endangered currently. Another huge threat is urbanization, and more people are coming into the area causing alterations. So agriculture and road expansion are two examples of this, and these both threaten the quality of water in the cave systems. And in landfills, the runoff from the landfills can put different toxic wastes into the park. And another thing is underground drilling, which has currently been banned to an act. And all of these things can affect the cave and the water that you drink. So, two things that have happened to the park during times. One of them are wildfires, and the LA Times produced an article in 2011, and for 2 weeks there were wildfires in Arizona and New Mexico, and they were trying to really contain them and control and put them out. But in result, 8,000 acres of the park were damaged due to the burning of the wildfires. And they evacuated 200 visitors from the park for a few days. And authorities said that luckily this caused little structural damage to the park. Another thing about the threats to the park is underfunding. And in 2010, this was brought up as a major hazard to the park, and this came from Environment New Mexico, and they were going to do budget cuts to the park. So 1% of their budgets were going to be cut, which is $63,000, which 1% doesn't seem like a lot, but in reality, the popularity of the park is increasing, and 2/3 of the national parks were recorded to have increased popularity throughout that year. And all the national parks were seeing visitorship climb. So the year before, 32,000 more people visited the park than in 2009. And the upkeep becomes a lot more challenging due to the budget cuts. And these resources can be damaged, and maintenance and upkeep becomes very challenging because they don't have the money. And one thing, we're going to conclude our presentation, and if you guys are ever near the park area and you decide to go in, 16 and over, it costs $10 to get into the park, and under 16 it's free. The park's open every single day of the year besides Christmas Day, so you could definitely go anytime you want to. And lastly, we wanted to leave you with this video, and it's basically going to show an overview of the park.
Carlsbad Caverns National Park. The state of New Mexico is fittingly described as the land of enchantment. And the home of Carlsbad Caverns National Park. High in southeastern New Mexico, within the Guadalupe Mountains, are 46,000 acres of wilderness. Here, on an arid plateau, water, seeping and trickling drop by drop, has over eons created lavish formations in limestone caves. Caves formed by sulfuric acid dissolving the rock deep underground. A cave of strange, often bizarre beauty. Carlsbad Caverns. Around the end of the 19th century, the cave was known to white settlers. Then one day, a lone 16-year-old cowboy, Jim White by name, saw a huge mass of bats rising from the desert hills. He assumed rightly they'd come from a cave. Any hole in the ground which could house such a gigantic army of bats, he commented later, must be a whale of a big cave. Jim went to see for himself. Lowering himself on a homemade ladder, he began exploring. And he kept on exploring for years to come. When he told the local folk what he discovered, they refused to believe him. In time, curious visitors started coming. Jim lowered those first tourists down into the cave in a big guano bucket. Today, a modern elevator accommodates visitors, taking them 750 feet down to the cave floor. This is what Jim White named the Big Room. A limestone chamber of extraordinary proportions. It could hold 6 football fields. Fantasy shapes and forms emerge from darkness. Stalagmites rising from the floor.
That concludes our presentation. Does anyone have any questions?